Prince George's County, Maryland. Today's date is May 28th, 2025. For a meeting to order at 6:43. Take a roll. You are speaking in person, just be present, and if you are virtual, just say present. Thank you. Vice Chair Sanchez. James.
Present virtually.
Brian. Brian. Vote. No. Present. As well. So, don't think we have a quorum, but for this community conversation and, quarterly Chiefs meeting, we do not have to have. So we're gonna get started. Thank you for those that are here. We do have some bad weather, so there are some people that experience some delays along with a concert that is happening locally this evening. So moving on, the agenda is very light. So let's start off with the welcome and introduction. My name is Kelvin Ball. I think I'm probably gonna talk to Chief Harris. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Chief Franklin. So thank you for coming. Thank you for being here this evening. I'm the chair of the Peace County Village Board, and my name is Kelvin Ball. So we'll go around starting with Mr. Nelson.
Good evening.
Chief, I know that you answered this question before, so feel free to pass, so, if it's redundant. But the question is.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You just doing that?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Are you ready to get into it?
Yeah.
You see them? You ready? Yes, I just want them to know.
Okay, yeah, so I'm Lafayette Milton resident.
Sheila Bryant, also living up in Marlboro. Margaretville, Hampton, Bishopville.
And if we have any members that are present virtually, can you go ahead and introduce?
Good evening, Keenan James, also a resident of Upper Marlboro.
So we have present. So thank you. Okay. And if the chiefs can go ahead and introduce yourself, with Chief Franklin.
Evening, Chief Dan Franklin, Morningside Police Department.
Chief Little Austin, City of Mount Rainier Police Department.
Okay. David Burst, Chief of Police of Town of Marlboro. Thank you. Good evening, apologize in late, but Chief Tracy Stone, Coleman.
Dr. Spinning about how my legal counsel for the Gateway Authority that I'm just started. Both of you will update some of it's been in juvenile township mayors.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with questions. I'm sorry. Oh. So O'Neill, introduce yourself to the chief.
Earl O'Neill. How's everybody doing?
We'll go ahead and get started with the question. At first round, we'll start with Mr. Melton. We'll ask, then when Mr. O'Neill will go back. And we'll go. Mr. James will get you in that.
With our complaint investigation, how have complaint investigations by your agency potentially been impacted by this process that's been initiated?
If I'm up first, I can say with 100% honesty, I don't know, simply because I've not had any. And I've been chief well, since May 13th of 2020. So I can't say how it's been impacted. I just know I haven't had any. So a lot of my answers are probably going to be very unfulfilling. Not going to complain about that.
Right, is that, the new process has added a structure of transparency for us. That transparency to all of our investigations on our police officers, and has also increased the time that's required to complete each case due to the layered review that we have, and the reporting requirements that we have. Overall, positive.
Not had any cases.
So I'm pretty fine.
And I thought I could knock on wood until a few months ago when we did have, that one case, and fortunately it was a rather involved one. It's overall, I want to say positive. Negative part came with a, had to go outside investigation, and there was a criminal factor involved in it. Not that involved. Investigation, a little complicated to that, all understandable. So the negative part came when the ACC. It was about 4 months away. Wasn't kept apprised of what was going on. I thought we got through everything to that point. 30 days will be good. Whatever that outcome is, I didn't. Thank you. Exactly. And I don't know that there may have been, what kept apprised of what, I don't know, it may have been going, because we use an outside, investigator, it may have been going back. Follow that. Longer than,
What is expected? What do you expect?
about 30 days comes to mind, that's all we were sure, or I don't say promise, but it was, I thought at our chiefs meetings. we expect.
All right, I'll move on to question.
I think it's.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
I do want to say this, with your team here, with the ACC, and investigations that we've completed and sent forward, your team has been great. Follow up, the open communications, letting us know, and we're gonna check into it, get back with you, so, I've been impressed with it, in terms of what we've done. We've had 3 cases come before. Great.
I'm going to give the public engaged communicating with the community. I mean, citizens and organizations, businesses, local stakeholders, to create positive relations between your agency and the
So, I'd like to take that one, actually. Specifically, we, one event that I was very proud of this past year, police department donated and delivered meals to our senior citizens in the town of Morningside on Thanksgiving. You probably may have seen something on the news about it. Believe it or not, there was a lot of coverage. I was pleasantly surprised, but, that's one where we kind of took the initiative. We delivered 76 meals across 22 homes for seniors that otherwise may not have had a Thanksgiving dinner. So it was provided to them free of charge. Basically, it was all put together. All they had to do was heat it up. Texas Rib out of Clinton was the one who put everything together for us, the meals and everything. But like I said, it was at no cost to our seniors and their families. Some of the other ways, we have a very big July 4th celebration, which the town runs, but the police department has a large part of. And then specifically, August 5th this year, if anybody's interested. National Night Out, which is sponsored by the Morningside Police Department and carried out. We have a really big event, a really big social gathering, lots of prizes, games for the kids, things like that. So we do a lot of community events in addition to just the smaller events that we do. Like I said, like Thanksgiving dinner was one that was very rewarding because myself and my troops got to deliver to all these folks. They were very.
We got to live turkeys and stuff.
Oh, we had turkey, stuffing, green beans, cranberry sauce, gravy, the whole nine. Rolls and dessert too.
Spit out their cookies.
Yes, I did.
Great answer. Very good.
Well, a few more things to add. We're trying to do at least quarterly, one coffee with a cup. Last one we just had, partnered with our local 7-Eleven, and we had quite a few people come out. They gave us coffee, we provided the cups. We provided donuts and juices. So it was really nice chance for people to get out and actually meet us. But we too have National Night Out. We also have a pretty big public safety night. And that's with all of our law enforcement partners from the region, not just police, but fire, EMS. Last year, year before last, we had 2 helicopters come in Maryland State Police, sent us Trooper 2, the county sent us there, chopper the Guardian. So that's a big thing for the children. We also have frequent meetings with our seniors. And that really is a fulfilling thing. We have some of our local state politicians come as well for those meetings. So all of this does a lot to foster transparency and trust and legitimacy in our local community.
Station with the community, is it organized by the police department or the city or?
Yes, it's the one of the seniors is a joint venture with the city hall and with the police department, because a lot of times, even involved in our code department, code compliance department, some of the needs that seniors may have that they feel like aren't being met by their management company. So we have 2 large senior apartment buildings in Malvern.
Marlboro, we have our annual Marlboro Day. It's actually this coming, not this Saturday, next Saturday, June 7th. We do that every year. I host the Coffee with Cop monthly up until this year. I started in the 5 months. We have we have a movie night during the summertime. Basically, the children come out, watch a movie, rent a movie or a piece of whatever the case may be. I basically do an annual shredded event for faith and youth weekend. So we have a lot of people come out for that. Do a trunk or treat. Well, so we engage with a lot of different business owners, residents. We also have, like, we have an issue, you know, I personally help go out with, we create flyers, so like, take that the car and I've done Kia challenge and all that other stuff. We went out and put flyers on everybody's mailbox, stuff like that. I don't think yourself being a victim of crime, we got flyers for that as well, so you will receive.
For former manager, kind of all of the above, but as a small agency, as far as communicating with the presidents, we do a monthly report, which is rather detailed. We have a monthly council meeting that the president meets with the presidents. Almost an open door policy, or if anybody has concern, go down hall and speak with us, or call, telephone, email, very responsive to that. We've had a long-standing neighborhood watch committee that's kind, I don't say faded away, but not too much involvement in that. We're about to try WhatsApp, for a neighborhood watch WhatsApp. We'll see how it goes. We do have, in the community, we have several WhatsApp groups. Trying to dedicate one to
Okay, according to 2024 Administrative Charging Committee data, attention to duty, neglect, 21%, unbecoming conduct, 11%, use of force, 11%, and discourtesy, 8% by an officer. That represents half of all the allegations against officers. What strategies has your department implemented to mitigate and reduce these types of allegations? Sorry.
Fortunately, we have not had to with those type of complaints. And, I have stressed on it, the officers are aware that the complaint process, how it was handled, it's not like it used to be. These complaints will come through. Talk about the matrix. I think that has, probably eliminated those, reduced them, unfortunately, we haven't had also the, whereby. What they say is, yeah,
Yeah, pretty much the same. We haven't had any complaints, but, as you all may be aware, we have a monthly chiefs meeting. So as we're talking about different things that come up, other departments or in the state, we just have conversations with the officer, like, look, this is what's going on now, let's make sure you're aware, be paying attention to this, that, and the other, make sure that you're not being an example of some other department, you know, not criticizing that department, but if things happen, but just say, hey, look, this is what's the latest thing in the news, make sure you are aware to not do that, or to do it if it's something positive. Go from there. Yeah.
Thank you, Chief. Many of the things we look at is, as you know, I also serve on the State Training Commission as one of the commissioners. So I'm seeing firsthand the results of our new police accountability laws in effect in the state of Maryland. Truly, complaints that come before us, even back several departments, when officers coming for a recertification, they're truly being held accountable. When we were away at the Chiefs Conference in Ocean City, a few months ago, representative of the deputy executive director from the Police Training Commission came and spoke, and I thanked him for relaying to all of us chiefs in the state of Maryland there how stringent it is. They will embarrass police chiefs there. If you're bringing someone there and you haven't thoroughly vetted their background, it's going to be embarrassing. So clearly, I've seen them deny, or seen us deny recertification of police officers, meaning they can never be the police again in the state of Maryland. So what we're doing internally, because of some of the things I've seen, and what we've had is increased supervision of our team. Random, I think it's one of the questions we're going to get to later, but random reviews of body worn camera video. Actually listening to dispatch calls. And, I think we clarified in one of our meetings here that it's not necessarily a complaint for a citizen from a citizen, but a matter that involved a citizen. So those are things that we're looking at. But there was no complaint, but we heard something we didn't like on the radio. So it ended up coming here.
So, if I may, just, again, I'm kind of new in my post, but, what I did from day one was I put it on, I have 2 patrol supervisors in my agency. And the way that I decided to handle this type of thing to try and mitigate these complaints, your patrol officers, I felt like would, instead of me sitting up in front, beating my chest, things like that, saying, don't do this, I feel like they would take more stock in it if it came from their peers. And what I did was I impressed on my patrol supervisors that, guys, look, this is real. This happens all the time, and this could be a foot out the door if you don't do things correctly. I provided every one of my officers has a copy of the matrix. And I have had a department meeting specifically just to address that. because many of them weren't aware that that actually existed. That to me was a little scary, both from past leadership and the fact that these guys just didn't know. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be too worried because that means I didn't get in trouble. But I do interpersonal communications training with my supervisors and ask them to pass it on. And a lot of things that we do involve quarterly use of force trainings, whether it's a technique training or if it's something that maybe legit sponsors or IACP or something like that. So my thinking is to try and head that type of stuff off before it happens by equally both training and helping make sure that they recognize what can come of their actions. It's not like it used to be. So that it's kind of the way I did it, was trying to take a proactive.
Sorry, I heard that again, how it used to be, how it used to
But when I started in the late nineties, more often than not, now granted, it was in Pennsylvania. I moved down here in 2000. How it used to be was if you had a negative contact with a citizen, oftentimes you were pulled in the office, you got chewed out, and the chief would turn around and call back the person who said they were rude to me and said, I took care of it. That was the end of it. And a lot of times it would die there, things like that. Or a lot of times it may not have even been addressed at all. And, you know, I can tell you, I never will ever claim that I had a perfect record if I was a patrol officer. I certainly did not. But use of force complaints are the big one for me, because that one, not only will you end your career, you can end up in jail. So I feel like my job is to get to proactively prevent that, because again, how did it used to be? Unfortunately, back in the day, probably a lot different than it is now. Before my time, I'm sure it was even more different. I don't think that there was a whole lot of accountability at that point in time in certain places. I won't say every, but in certain places, there was a lot of things that probably were swept under the rug, which is probably hence why we have things like Baltimore City being under a federal consent decree. They didn't handle their business when they were supposed to.
Mr. James, can you go ahead and ask the next question, son?
Sure.
Next question, sir. But real quick, we have a chief that's just showed up, so we'd like you.
Good evening, my name is Anthony Ayers, the chief of police for the town of Carter City.
Thank you, sir.
I'll jump into our next question, which is going to focus on, well, how does your department ensure data is publicly accessible? How is your department ensuring that data is publicly accessible? And so I will start, I guess, Chief Franklin, you're closest to me on the screen, so I'll start right there. That's just easiest.
Sounds good to me. In addition to that, just following the Maryland Public Information Act guidelines, the way that I do it is I present a monthly report at our council meeting. So, and it's relatively detailed as far as that's your, I guess you would call it everyday data, the day-to-day operational data. As far as complaint data, like I said, I don't have any to provide, so I can't tell you how I do that right this minute. But generally speaking, when someone calls in, regardless of what their reasoning is, if they're asking for something that isn't personnel record protected, they get it. So it's, I guess it would be an ask and receive, would be my best answer.
One thing we do in the city of Mount Rainier is we publish weekly calls for services law. So that's found on our city's website. For every call for service that comes out, we actually put that on our city website. We also respond promptly to any of the Maryland Public Information Act requests. That's actually filtered through our city clerk, sometimes our city attorney as well.
Pretty much the same thing. We honor all the BI requests that come in.
Chief Bears, City. We had pretty much the same format. In reference to, the place on an officer, we received our first one last year. We still have active, investigation on that right now. But what we're gonna try to do is try to find some kind of way to have it accessible to citizens that have questions about what occurred. Anything we can release, we will release. But we have our monthly meetings that we have with our council. We give monthly reports of crime stats. This is something new for me. It's my first case that we ever had in my town, and we're trying to make sure that we have everything done correctly instead of running this mandates.
Yes, sir. Does your department regularly review by recording, if not?
Yes, we have a monthly, audits for our body worn cameras. We have a sergeant that goes through, random, stops and as well as incidents. Anything we see that is kind of, out of the ordinary or something that needs more training, we actually bring it to attention, well, she brings attention to myself. We try to make sure that we provide the training, to our officers that need that, as well as we try to find ways to actually better our police tactics. We have noticed some, things that, need to be improved on in reference to, officer safety. We noticed some things, in the past, audits in reference to procedural, problems. But all in all, I think it's great for us to do our audits. I think it's very helpful for us to be, very transparent with what we see and how we address it. I think the best thing to do is when we see things that are broken, we need to fix it immediately. And I think the audits are very good right now, among the audits.
Banner, similar. We refuse the, recording about at least every 2 weeks. Our current system, we have to be present with the recording equipment before July 1st. We haven't found any issues that require investigation as far as use of force, things like that. But as Chief Ayers mentioned, there are some issues that come up where maybe the tactics could be a little better.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Review on any issues come up. Try to address them immediately. Like I said in the earlier question, just try to have conversations with the officers after coming to these, not coming to one of the chiefs meeting and hear things that's going on, just making sure that they're aware, to just make sure they don't have an issue in the future. Try to give it out there so that they know what to be expected. It's not just in the state of Maryland. I watch the news all the time. I know a lot of people are watching stuff going on in other states. Like, look, I saw this on news from another state. Make sure we're not doing it here. It may not be something violation here, but they could potentially become an issue. So definitely discuss stuff like that.
Our supervisors conduct random, body worn camera reviews. I was surprised when I arrived at Mount Rainier that they were one of the first cities in the state to get body worn cameras. They probably had them in effect for over 13 years. So they had pretty much come up with the system even before it became law. We stayed to that system. We have the buffering, right before, a minute before it was activated. We'd had that in effect for years. And following any use of force, incidents or any complaints, we review that video, and your team has been great accepting that we send it with our report as well. That's pretty much all we do with the body board. And we also see that me coming from Capitol Heights where we didn't have body board cameras, I saw my team was a lot more accountable at Mount Rainier. The team was already there to do their act. They realized they're being recorded. We also know that a lot of citizens, when we advise them that you'll be being recorded, both by audio and video, outcomes are a lot better. We use body worn camera, video and footage to exonerate officers. The citizen said, this officer said, we reviewed it, nothing like that was said. So, it's a good thing.
Sorry, I did that phone call, but I'm gonna add on to what you said. The audits are very helpful too, because like you said, it gets the officers to understand that we're watching. We do random audits, to the point where we be fair about it. At the same time, when we go back and talk to them about something that can do better, we see the change. We see that a positive change where the officers are actually trying to make a difference. We had a big problem when we first started with, foul language. And I think once we start showing that we had audits, we saw it come down tremendously. And I think that's accountability and showing these officers that we are doing audits, and it's actually helping to change the way they are treating people, the way they are words come out their mouths, even when they have a high intensity situation where sometimes you have to use words to get people attention. They are watching what they say. And I see it sometimes when they kind of catch themselves and try to, get themselves back into order. And I think it's really worked. So I think it's positive things with the body worn camera and the audits.
So, for my agency, we have several things where, we do mandatory reviews. First, any, custodial arrest, domestic violence incident, crime of violence, or, what I would consider a out of the ordinary citizen contact. Those are mandatory reviews by me. As far as the random audits, usually I'll take anywhere from 5 to 10 random body worn camera videos in a week and just review them at various times. Obviously, any complaints that come in, they also get reviewed. That's a mandatory, but for the most part, the random reviews, if I review 5 to 10 body worn camera footage, incidents a week, that covers probably of our dispatch calls, and probably covers greater than 50% of our dispatch calls within jurisdiction. I also will review ones out of jurisdictions that we have been called to, just to make sure that we're doing right, not only in town, outside of town.
Knowing that you all are charged with leading your departments, I want you to think about this in the sense of the broadest sense of the word, in terms of what additional resources would you all need to ensure that you felt like you were doing your job effectively for your department?
I'll jump on that one. As far as additional resources to make sure that I'm doing my job, what I've suggested to my mayor and council is, instead of a yearly evaluation, I've requested that they do one every 6 months. And what I suggested then was get one of the 360 evaluation tools, and also strongly encourage them to take feedback from the officers. Please, 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 please talk to the guys. And I've expressed this to the guys that the elected officials will be talking to you about how I'm doing. And I want you guys to be honest, because I feel like for me to be the most effective, number one, I have to know who I'm dealing with, which is my employees, my officers. And the other part of it is the folks that I answer to, who in turn answer to the citizens. I also answer to the citizens to some degree, but for the most part, the elected officials are the ones who ultimately are more than likely going to hear about what kind of job I'm doing, whether it's good, bad, or something else. So that's kind of what my one thing is. To be 100% honest with you, I'm kind of rebuilding a department. We were down to 4 people when I got there. We'll be at 11 by October, and still identifying what other resources I might need. So right now, I've just kind of put my faith in the officers to express what they think and the electeds to express what they think.
I think the concern that, I'm having with my department is, like I said before, I had my first, complaint on officer, last year and this year. It's pretty much in reference to, trying to keep a positive, keep the morale up, more officers, especially with what's going on down in the State House in reference to not expunging, officers that are found, exonerated for their, allegations and stuff, and that's a big concern for my officers. They see what the other officers are going through right now. Not saying this officer is going to, be proven guilty or innocent, but they're very concerned that if they do get in trouble, and found that was a fact that they got exonerated, why does this stay on their records the rest of their careers? And that's kind of hardening because sometimes people are scared to do their jobs because they make a complaint that it's unfounded, but this stays on their record for the remainder of their careers. And they keep on giving me that same scenario over and over again when we have our meetings. And I don't know what to say to them. I said, we keep on trying down in Annapolis to see if we can get it removed and be fair because we exonerate criminals. But we can't exonerate officers that it did not do, especially if we have our one camera to show that they didn't say that charge or that incident stays on their records and can't be expunged.
So just for, excuse my ignorance, so if it's on your record, does it also attach the outcome to it? Would it say exonerated or would it just be on their record?
Well, it's going to have exonerated on the record, but it's the point where it still be in there. And then sometimes it will actually be held against them if they get another complaint saying that, okay, well, here's a pattern or here's this. But if you have proof that this person had, like for instance, you get a complaint of a person being disrespected or was language, and you review the body on camera, I'm just making this, and they say so that nothing happened that way. That still has to be documented because it's a complaint. But the evidence shows that this person didn't do it at all. That stays still in that record. And so if they get another one, yeah, you see the facts and stuff, but it still looks bad for your record that you have a complaint that's still sitting there. And I'm not saying remove it completely all of a sudden, maybe after 2 years, have it dropped off, or 3 years, have it dropped off. But to have something on the record where you know for a fact this person didn't do what they did or said, the person said they were doing, I think it's wrong to keep on their records. That's what I'm saying.
That's a state law.
That's state law. It can't be removed at all. And I think they tried to get it removed this past year in the building in the house.
I testified on that one.
And the scary thing about it is we want the officers to do their job. And we have a lot of officers that go past things. And I've noticed it a lot, especially when you see a violation and stuff as a chief, you go past, you see officers go right past it. I mean, you don't want crimes to go crazy, but at the same time, you want officers to do their job. At the same time, how far can they do the job without getting in trouble? And I knew this was gonna be a problem when we first started. I said, you know what, officers stop doing things. The routine stops when we stop. You know, they're not going to do traffic stops that they did before. The 9 times out of 10, most people that we get with open warrants are about routine traffic stops. And you see that drop significantly this last couple of years. Traffic stops have gone down. And I'm not saying that, you don't want to have positive contacts, but sometimes the person with that taillight out, sometimes that person that is driving erratically needs to be stopped because it's public safety. And we see that, a lot of times these officers go right past it, let people go down the street with lights out, go down the street swerving. And they say, well, I'm not going to invest with it because I won't get in trouble. But we have to be able to show these officers that, as long as you do what you're supposed to do correctly, we have your back. And I think that, what y'all doing here in Prince George County, y'all are proving, showing that, y'all being fair. But at the same time, we have to get back to our officers that, they have a fair process here. And, maybe some kind of way where we have roll call, maybe y'all come down and talk to them or something like that. We just need to reassure them that, hey, look, as long as you do your job the correct way, we'll have your back. And I think they feel kind of different right now.
Right, well, and to jump in, on that, and I think I spoke to the chief's meeting, and I addressed that, that I thought that being a concern. Because I have watched video where something was said, the allegation, it completely was false. But again, it stays in the officer's file. For an example, racial discrimination, racial profile, right? They had tinted windows, so we see that a lot. So if there's a pattern, and somebody just requested the data, it will show that that officer has a track record without knowing the outcome. They have 7 complaints, just use that as an example of racial profiling, but it's not true. But it puts a stigma over the officer. So that's why I spoke at the chief's meeting several months ago and spoke about that. We talked about that on the agency, and I think it's something that we should look at as a board and consider. We want it to be fair on both sides, right? We want to do our part to make sure that the quality of life is the best that it can be for this county citizens and the office out there.
States have a process, they do remove it. Do that incident from the office directly.
Well, we used to have a process here in the county where, after so many years, you had the right to yourself as an officer, go into personnel and request side forms, request your, all your, I guess, write-ups, your basically expunged from your record, your personnel record. That process has been, eliminated now. So like you said, we have to be open with our complaints. We have to be open with it. When people come in and say, well, how many complaints have you had with this officer? They can look at the case file. They will see that this officer had 2 complaints that were set against for her. They don't go into detail that he was exonerated. It just says that he had 2 complaints.
I'm saying, my question is, like, Virginia has the same law.
I don't.
West Virginia, I'm just saying, they stays on the records in those places.
Not necessarily. I know for a fact that in Prince George County in the state of Maryland, we used to have a process where you can get your record expunged if you were found not guilty or you had a write-up in your file, something minor. After so many years, you could actually request to be removed. I know for other agencies might have it in other states, but because the state of Maryland went to mandate that everything has to stay in there.
State law overruled that.
Right, exactly.
That's why I asked that.
I'm pretty sure other
Maybe
states.
something, they have a different law there after 2 years, 5 years, if he has no more incidents, automatically follows. States that have that.
Well, let me say this, to my knowledge, it was pretty general across the country. But recently, the state of Maryland decided to enact one of the most stringent police accountability laws. And that was and I believe the direct effect of brutality that we saw with the murder of George Floyd. Maryland came in and put together the police accountability board, and we truly need to reform. But other things are coming up each session of the legislature, where they're looking at whether we can roll back some of the things. Because as Chief has mentioned, you have many people also who don't want to be in law enforcement. They don't want to be any, they don't want to join law enforcement. The police retention and recruitment, that's a big part of what we need resources for now.
No, that's not the question. Question is, does in Pennsylvania, if I have the same incident, after 5 years, it's expunged from my record. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about accountability, but I'm talking about what you were talking about as it relates to that.
Can I give a little bit of background on that, just before I know Chief probably got both barrels loaded up on this. just according to something that is, I think it's called National Association for Civilian Law Enforcement Oversight. According to that website, which I would trust would probably be fairly accurate, there's only 160 jurisdictions in the United States that have civilian accountability. Now, with that being said, to my knowledge, the one that I am familiar with, only because I was asked to testify one time out of state, was, it was in, believe it or not, it was in North Carolina, because something occurred down there when I was on vacation. North Carolina, the complaint ended up being unfounded. To the best of my knowledge, their record was wiped. There was not that there was no record of it, but after a certain, they equated it to a no contest plea to an investigation. They said, I think after a year, it could be wiped from their record. Don't quote me on that. That's just what I was told by the supervisor.
And what we're saying is that, I'm not saying that, for hard crime, like, use of force situations. We're talking about the minor stuff like language, other things like that. Now, if the use of force was used and is found guilty, then yes, I don't think that should be expunged. I think it should stay on the first record. But they found that they've been exonerated or anything that is a minor infraction, I think it should be able to be removed after a certain amount of time. And the reason why I say that is maybe a 2-year period. The officers that get in trouble in a 2-year period, then it should drop off. Any major stuff, yes, it should stay on there because you have to have some kind of way to gauge and flag the people that are bad apples or bad actors. But at the same time, we need to be fair to our officers. Like Chief Officer said, is that we have a hard time recruiting and retaining our officers because people think that they're not being treated correctly or they're not going to have a fair due process. And I think what we have to do is be open with them on what we're doing, but at the same time, try to find ways to alleviate some of the pressure off of them because we don't want anybody to get hurt because they're not doing something. When we do these audits on these body-worn cameras, that's one of the training issues we have, officer safety. And when I go talk to them and say, why do you do this? They say, well, Chief, I didn't want, to go hands-on because I don't want to get complained. I said, well, this guy right here, he could have hurt someone. I said, you need to go hands-on with him because he was getting ready to engage and hit a person. And your job is to protect that citizen. And you let this person walk right up to this person. But if you pull a gun out or pull a knife out, this person will kill. You have to stop him from moving toward him. Why you want to grab him because of X, Y, Z? And they keep on fearing getting a complaint. And officer safety as well as safety of citizens are being compromised because the officer's not acting the way he was trained to act. And because he feels like, he's going to be charged with something because he grabs him. And so we have to keep on doing training over and over again and say, look, rely on your training, rely on your training, rely on your training. But it's get to the point where people are second guessing themselves. And that's the scary thing about law enforcement. You cannot second guess yourself. The more training you get, it be second nature. But when you're not training, and some of these departments don't have the time like I have. Our partial service is very low. So we have time to train our officers. Some departments, they fall. They don't have time to do a retraining like I can. And what happens is those officers are not doing things because they're second guessing themselves. And the first thing we'll do is have someone get killed, or another officer get hurt or killed because they're not doing the right procedure. They're scared they want to get public complaint.
So before we go back to the original question, staff just shared with me that Maryland does in fact have a process. It does require for anything unfounded, it can be expunged, but it doesn't have to be unfounded, and it has to be a 3-year waiting period. So she said that she's.
As of right now, yes. As of October 1st, no.
Oh, so that is what eliminated the, oh, okay.
Thank you for that, Mr. Malcolm.
That seems to be a really precarious balance, and it is dangerous, but what you said is you rely on your training, makes a lot of sense. But if you're always in the back of your mind thinking, I'm on camera, I can't do it, and that's really scary.
The scenario I was talking about was domestic. There was a domestic situation where the husband was moving very aggressively toward his wife, and the officer didn't try to separate him or stop. And what if the guy had a knife and ran there to stab her? We were told to keep everybody separated this officer, when I talked to him, he told me that, the reason why he grabbed him, because he didn't want to get complained for grabbing. He tried to use his words, and so on, step back, but once he doesn't listen to you, and he goes toward that victim, you gotta stop him. That's the stuff that was happening, these officers second guessing themselves. And that, we have to keep on trying to retrain them, they try to get them in mind that they have to react. And, this climate we're in right now, they're thinking too much, and I think what's happening right now, we're gonna have some bad incidents because of that.
So, did, everybody answer your question? We kind of got off topic.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to do is make sure that we stay on topic of the questions. If you have some follow-up questions, maybe we can write it down. If we can give the chiefs an opportunity to answer the questions that were asked, but they get it.
None of y'all think they're more important. Say additional resources, that's it. Oh, that was.
We don't use more money. We think everything. Come on, man, I don't know that they, this board, right, any resource here, I think if we get money from our town, we're very small and we are only part-time, to better serve our community, to have additional funds for additional officers, perhaps be 24 hours, but.
And one of our biggest things is, using technology to enhance our enforcement in our city. We've seen with, grant we received, Project Safe Neighborhoods, Maryland, that we received for the entire state of Maryland. The Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The AI cameras that we have, throughout the city, they've been multiplied. Back in September 23rd, we had a triple shooting and homicide in that one incident. I was able to use those cameras to identify our suspect, to actually put him as a person of interest in that system, and to show for a month before that incident, everywhere he traveled, clear, high definition of him traveling throughout our city. It actually showed him with the actual clothing on, hour and 20 minutes before that shooting. I was able to upload that footage, actually still pictures to Prince George's County Homicide. They quickly identified, and within a week, they had him in custody. Technology, anything we can do as chiefs, and the Police Chiefs Association of Prince George's County to enhance, and recently we just received a grant, collectively, all of us, from the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention, federal grant to enhance our data sharing for car thefts throughout our region. And that grant was for over $300,000. We had 100% participation, and we'll begin to roll that out July 1.
I know that we're in a sort of a bad financial situation as a state and as a county right now, so. I mean, this is probably like wishful thinking, but, that sounds like, with those things probably sound promising. There is some controversy about facial recognition and AI aspect of it. But the way you used it seems to be.
As many people are concerned with who can see this information. And then our information is kept between me, command staff, and the detectives who are investigating right internally. So we're not issuing it just to watch people, but for actual incidents that may occur. So it's been a game changer for us. It's been a force multiplier. The system will actually, we had a suspect vehicle that may be red in color. You can actually put in a scan for every red vehicle that traveled in on that street or in that area. We can now do the actual make and model of vehicle. So that clearly, and then with LPR technology, we have felony vehicles throughout our region. It'll actually alert us that a felony vehicle is now in our city. before you even create further crime. So we possibly are stopping crimes before they happen. So any resources that we can get to help enhance technology, also help with data storage as well. Is one of the mandates for the new police accountability laws is that we track all of our data for our complaints in the internal affairs of them. Many of us have looked to purchase a program called IA.
So good evening, and my apologies for being late. I was coming from Laurel, didn't judge the time, stuck in traffic, and then there's some concert going on. So I just got completely stopped. So my apologies. And so, yes, I do have next question. What processes do you follow if a person wants to withdraw their complaint? Or what process do you recommend when a community member would like to withdraw a complaint?
When everybody speak up at once.
Well, like I said, I haven't had any, but the thing that I just actually working with Lexipol is legit. What I had put in our policy manual was if a person comes to us saying they wish to withdraw a complaint that they made, I don't take immediate action and require a 48-hour cooling period and then a personal follow-up with them in order to make sure.
We haven't encountered that. I would say that it depends on the complaint. The complaint that there's obvious misconduct and for whatever reason, I don't want to follow up on that. Oh, I got a broken nose, but I don't want to follow up. It's still follow up. Something very minor.
Yeah, so we haven't had any complaints, but obviously if the chief said if it's something serious, we're gonna follow through with it, but if it's something minor, depending on what it is, just take it into consideration. Now, I didn't think about the cooling off period, but just let the person know that, hey, after a day or two, be sure, we'll make sure, because I don't want you to come back, and I gotta start all over, and days have gone by. So far, we haven't, but I think it should be a process where if someone wants to withdraw a complaint, it's nothing serious, they should be allowed to do it.
I agree. I think that withdrawal should be in writing. It be documented in writing and documented that it's voluntary. And then we need to assess internally whether it still warrants an internal review or investigation.
I agree with, all chiefs. They're saying, but I think, it's something that we really think about. I didn't think about that until you just said it, and that's, something that, we need to consider to have some kind of policy to put in place for something like this. Because I can see how a person can drop something and they don't want to come back and say, well, I want to, move forward with it. And then some of the evidence is gone and stuff like that. So, I think it should be on severity of the complaint. I think we should, don't close it out. I think if someone comes in and say, well, I want to close it out, I don't think it should be closed out for us until we have a certain period of time, maybe like 6 months. Person to come back, then we'll close it out totally. Keep all the evidence that we already had before the person told us they will close out or she will close out. But that's something we really need to think about to have a policy for, because I can see that happen. I can see someone coming in and say that they were mistreated, or maybe the officer went a little bit overboard to reference to be aggressive. I think we should still look at the cameras to make sure that, if there's something there, we should move forward. Even if they want to drop it, we need to move forward internally. That's something I think all of us will do anyway, especially if we have body cameras. But anything that is done after hours, we have, my situation with my officer was off duty. So he didn't have a body camera on. So it's a lot different. So I still want that to be investigated, especially if someone says, if I want to drop it, I think it's something that I need to look into a little bit further. So we should have some kind of policy put in place to have some kind of guidelines, because I'm one chief person might come replace me, say, well, I'm just dropping, I'll forget about it. You need to have something in place that, you know, kind of say, this is, what you need to do, or something like that. And that's, I'm glad you brought that question up, because I didn't think about that.
And that is good documentation to show the person wasn't coerced by.
Right, exactly.
the complaint.
Or fear that they might be retaliating.
So we actually talked about that, last week in our ACP meeting, because we saw 3 cases, just within the month where after watching the video with the citizen who, filed the complaint, they wanted to withdraw because the evidence said, and these 2 of the citizens, they were under the influence of alcohol, but when they actually watched the video, they said, okay, we want to withdraw the complaint. So that was something that we talked about. I was going to bring to the board here to see if we can, look at some things like that, because again, we want this to be fair on both sides. And that is fair process. But like everyone here said, I think that there should be some documentation that the citizen that actually filed the complaint has to sign.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because my situation with my officer was off duty. And I could see, because we don't have body worn camera, I could see how that could actually slip through. Like if someone said, well, I want to drop it. Luckily, there's other cameras footage that was available, but what if it wasn't? So we have to watch out for that. We should make sure that, you know, we don't close our things out just, you know, because they say we'll close it out. If something's that serious, I think we should at least try to do our due diligence to look a little bit further. If we see there's nothing going that way and the person dropped it, that doesn't mean that we have to drop it. We should still look into it. And I think we should have something set up in place.
And then we, I'm sorry.
No, I have a follow-up to that. Just, so I heard everybody, but I just want to, how many of you all have a process, whether it's formal or informal, show of hands? How many of you all document? Document, okay. No, document now if you have a process. Okay,
Process in reference to
what we're talking about, yeah, because I heard,
I don't have a process, but I do document everything. But I think it should be a process because, like I said, I'm one chief. Might come behind me, they might have a different philosophy. I do. I think it should be something that is across the board. Because the reason why, because I had situations that if he dropped that, I would never known about it. And because nobody knew. It was after hours. He wasn't on the clock, but he's still representing my department after hours. So what if that person dropped? I would never know about it. So it's very important that if someone drops something, if you think it's serious, I think we should go ahead and do this to move forward with it until we can resolve it. And then we will be close it out. I think we should close it out. It's nice to go.
so I guess we all agree that we should have some process and that we should document.
Maybe a policy, something that's already written, something that you already know, now that you never thought about it before, but yeah, something already in place. So if this happens, this is the way it's gonna.
Yeah, I think we should keep on moving forward to exhaust it.
And just for the record, I don't think anybody in this would knowingly walk away from anything where they know something bad has happened. So if you have a complaining person that wants to withdraw, that is, that is absolutely their right. As long as it's documented, there's no coercion, no force, that is perfect. However, that doesn't mean that we're not going to make sure that our officers are accountable. Because nobody likes a bad cop. And that, if that's the case, if this is something that, maybe there was some intimidation or something like that behind the scenes, that doesn't excuse it.
Question number 8. So the question is, does your agency use or have as a resource a third-party mediator to assist with complaint resolution? These mediators are all for insurance?
I've not had that occasion, but I don't believe we do.
Yeah, we use Prince George's County for my situation. I'm so small. I don't have the resources to actually investigate our own complaints. So we did use resources that Prince George's County Police Department provided to us. They do have mentoring individuals come and mediate situations that are minor infractions. We never used it yet, But I know for a fact that St. Louis County has, capability to give us a person that will actually help mediate it. Because that's something that I think it works well, especially building a relationship between two people, especially when somebody has a misunderstanding. It's good to mediate it instead of going further with a complaint. Maybe it's just somebody had a bad day and both of them had bad days, and we sit down, hear both sides, and have a mediator there to actually solve it. I think that's the best way to go about it, because that system has shown that he or she has been heard. At the same time, something was done about it. Sometimes it can be mediated. I never had a situation yet, but I know for a fact I can see a situation that mediator would be very beneficial. I can't afford a mediator for our budget.
But do you envision that between officers or between officers and citizens?
No, I think, between officers and citizens, I think, a mediated process would be excellent for something like this, because maybe before it goes to, ACC or somewhere else, that if we can mediate something that's a minor infraction, yes, a citizen made a complaint. Like, for instance, I think he disrespected me. That's a complaint. But if we go ahead and bring both parties in and have a mediator that is paid for by someone, or someone, that will come and mediate for free, to come in and mediate both sides, come to a resolution that, hey, look, it's a misunderstanding, this, we can actually close that out and send it up to, be reviewed. But the mediator will, put their notes in with the package to go up to y'all to actually review it. But if we go ahead and triage some of those, some minor complaints like that, I think it's beneficial for everybody.
Did anyone else see one comment?
No, you got a question. James, that's me. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Mr. James.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Chief Ayers, great observation. And I would say that that resource is available to all of you all. It's built into the legislation. So something that you can consider is that those complaints can be referred to a third-party mediator. I think that that also reduces the resources that you have to use to go through an investigation if the officer and the complainant, that citizen or that community member would opt for mediation. So again, it reduces the time and it reduces the resources that you all would have to use. So that's built into the legislation and something that I think you all should consider.
James, you're up to question number 9.
All right. And then, so the question is, the PAB is looking to gather data on actual disciplinary outcomes for cases. And I know that some of you have already mentioned that you don't or have not had any cases, but we're looking to collect the actual outcome that has resulted from those that have been administratively charged. Would you be willing to submit your final decisions to the PAB once those cases have been received on your desk for final disposition? Would you be willing to submit that data, that information back to the PAB on the final disciplinary outcome?
Yes, most definitely. But the problem I have with it is that, going back to my situation, this occurred a year ago. I don't know how to actually, will be counted for when it's completed, or will be counted when it first was submitted as a complaint. That's the question we have. Because sometimes you may have false, I guess, information in reference to your collecting of the data. Because sometimes a complaint came in 2023 and it didn't get cleared out until 2025. So now you might have something saying, well, we had this many complaints in 2025, but actually that complaint was 2023. So I don't know if once my hearing is completed, because the guy's going to trial board, my office is going to trial board. Once we get it completed at trial board, would it be backdated for when it first was initiated or when it's completed? That's my question.
Me, it would be after completing, because they're final decision. So it doesn't matter. Specifically, it won't matter when it came in, it's for what happened. And
For our purposes, the date is less significant. It'd be more so just closing out the outcome.
So outcome date.
So yeah, so whichever date we go by wouldn't necessarily impact what we would be considering.
Right. The reason why I say that,
Dates probably do matter for this purpose.
Yeah, the reason why I said it is because, we should receive something from your office almost, yearly saying that, what cases, are going on. So I just want to make sure we have categories that we can actually, use. Like if you say it's an open case, you should say, well, how many open cases do you have? How many closed cases? I think if you do it that way, we feel more comfortable on where we can check the box. Because last year, y'all asked me, how many people were found guilty, but it didn't say how many open cases. And that made me feel kind of like, should I report it? And I called up here and said, don't report it yet because it's not over yet. But I think it'd be more clear, like saying, well, how many open cases you have, how many closed cases you have, it'd be easier if you had those two check boxes.
Okay, and then follow on would be of the closed cases, what was the final disciplinary action?
But it'll give us a spot that we have open cases.
Sure. Do anybody else have a problem sharing data with us? About that?
No, we don't.
Case.
That's what it's asking, so share the data.
Let me make sure I understand the question. So you're asking for, when we as chiefs render our discipline, are we willing to share what discipline we render?
Yes.
Okay,
So-
yes, yes.
And I believe that the question came up in our discussion was that if the ACC's findings, that the chiefs can go higher. If you in fact, decide to go higher, would you share that information, with the police accountability board? Have any of you had to, go higher, or did you just continue to stick with what the ACC find?
I've gone higher. I've, for two of the ones, one was a demotion in rank because of the sustained charges. The other one was a performance improvement plan. Both officers rejected my visit. One officer was, in fact, separated for something else. The other one is coming before the administrative hearing board. And I have some questions for you again about how that works with our city attorney. Well, maybe we'll ask him at another time.
There's a question about your questions to us.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I'm sorry, Attorney Camp.
I just was saying, I know just to the point that Mr. Melvin made about the dates don't matter. But really, it is looking for trends and they're not for the specifics. It's just that we see things happening and being able to see stuff from beginning to end and evaluate helps when they're doing, when PAB is doing any reports. The other way that it might be used, like you said, a couple of things you all did that had my brain going, and types of legislation that could be recommended based on some of the things that you see. So for us, it's less of the kind of specific things for the big picture. We see it across the board, with all of them. So we have to.
I mean, because that's the purpose of this board, is really to recognize what the trends are and what's being done to mitigate, and how can we be that liaison to the community and you. And so it would help tremendously, like you said, that we have that information, like what happened? Did you follow the recommendation of the ACC? Did you think it was not enough, not serious enough for if the person was found, if it was sustained, or if you think it was too harsh? Either way.
I think that, for the sake of redundancy, I think that if you go higher, I'd like to see that. If you accept its findings, I don't think it makes you dumb. You understand that. But in your example, chief, if you've gone higher, you can just share that with us. That would be good too. You guys, anybody goes higher. I think that would be something that citizens, I want to say, like to hear from it would show if you're out there doing the right thing. That most of the, when I spoke to all of you, collective message from the chief is that we don't want anybody always. My friend, that over. So chief, I commend you for going high. That's what this is. Thank you. So thank you. That's that question. My microphone went out. I'm the lowest talking person in this room. That will go out. But I'll try to speak up. If I just have one more question. What, if anything, are you doing to implement Executive Order 14288, strengthening and unleashing law enforcement? I can give you familiar with that. No idea. One question, it was just, I have no idea. I just saw the question that was submitted. Yeah, it was submitted. So what we will do, so what we will do is ask for more clarity, for that. So maybe they can share that with us and we'll send that out, via email. And so if, you can answer that, we'll definitely make sure we address that. Toughest question. I'll ask the toughest question. Have any questions for us?
Yes.
In 5 seconds and then.
Real quick. All right, I have a situation that's on right now. I put in a reconsideration, I guess, letter in reference to the punishment for the officer in question. And I think that, if possible, that before y'all make a decision, that I could come in and actually speak to the ACC and give my point of view, for decisions being made. Sometimes writing down some of my ideas is one thing. Another thing is coming here and tell you what I feel about certain situations, and get feedback, and y'all can ask questions for me. Because what happens sometimes is that sometimes videos are good, but sometimes it depends on what a person feels at that moment when they are engaged in a situation. I'm not here to say anyone's innocent or guilty. I think sometimes we need to hear the point of view of the individual that is being, found to be in violation. And I don't think that, looking at some of the notes that I received back from the investigator, and seeing the statement the officer said, I see some things that might be inconsistent, and some things that was never mentioned that the officer has spoken to me about. And I think sometimes we know our officers kind of well, especially small agencies. We know when someone's out of character or when someone has done something wrong, or the situation they're going through personally. And I think that sometimes need to be weighed in. No one wants a bad officer, but at the same time, I don't want to give it an officer that had a bad day. And I think sometimes if we had a chance to actually talk on behalf of that situation, what's going on in that individual's life, and the help that the individual is receiving, I think the outcome would have been a little bit different.
It provides the context.
Yeah, I think we should have a right, because when what was told to me is that I could come in to show my support, but I could not speak on the officer, and I couldn't speak on the situation if I came here. So I say, well, why should I come if I can't speak about the situation or the officer? There's no need for me to come.
So I think that would be something that the administrative charging committee would address, as opposed to the police accountability board. I'm not sure if you communicated with the investigator or the program manager on that side. I think that there were some requests, and for me, I thought that it was important that we make sure that every officer has an opportunity to explain their side. The citizens should have that too. So we don't want to become the trial board, right? And so I think that one of the things that is important is maybe to write it and send it up, and to make sure that it's on the agenda in the closed session for the administrative charging committee. And at that point, if there are any questions for clarity or maybe some context, if you can address the issues in writing, I think that would be important. But if it's involving a citizen, I think that we want to make sure that there's an equal balance, right? Because we don't want to appear that you have an opportunity to speak with the citizen doesn't. So I think that it's important to put it in writing. And once you put it in writing, we'll take a look at that, put it on the agenda, and then we'll get back to it.
Yeah, but it was put in writing.
Okay.
So, but it's the point where, due process is the hearing him on board.
Mhm.
So he's one hearing board, but it's the point where I'm just trying to figure out a way that, we can actually eliminate, because I mean, right now, to be honest with you, my small town has spent a lot of money for hearing boards. And if we keep on having a situation where we have officers, saying the best way for them to get their self heard is go to hearing board, there's a missing piece right here because, it would bankrupt our town if we had several officers that's a situation like this. I had an officer that's also rode for a whole year. But it's the point where we can't solve this in one session, but this, my concern is that we have to be watch. There's a missing piece somewhere. And I haven't figured out yet, there's a missing piece somewhere where we have to find ways to actually find that common ground without breaking the bank for small agents like us. And we can't keep an officer off the street for a year and a half, and we can't use it. It really puts us in a bind. And like I said, you know, it's a missing piece in the middle, that's all I'm saying. We just gotta figure it out.
So I think that, for the sake of time for everyone, before we leave, I'll get you information. You say that even with me today, we're meeting tomorrow evening. I'll try to get that on the schedule so we can address it, and get back to you. I don't know what was said to you by the investigator or one of the things I thought that was important again is that we don't want to always, because once we start something and everyone else would want to say, well, I want to come in and defend my officer, right?
No, I mean, I'm not saying that, it's not
No.
what we're, I'm not saying that, but I understand what you're saying,
Mhm.
because, I believe that, the person that's but it's, I talk offline.
Yes, we just want to make sure that for the record, excuse me, I just want to make sure for the record that we want to make sure that it's valid.
Valid, yes.
And that also that whatever it is, it's documents, right? We want to make sure that it's documentation. Then we'll respond with the FD board, the ACC, does have questions or any concerns. I think that we should document that too. And without going into specifics, we have to talk about something like that in closed session. And I think that's important that we can't speak to specifics because we want the citizens to know this is transparent. So we have to figure out a way that if that happens, that we share what was shared with us, with the citizen who filed the complaint, and then it be done in open session.
And that's the problem. The citizen that put the complaint in went to regular court in reference to the, I guess, the
Right.
court case,
Right.
and said that that's not the one with the problem.
Right.
That's the problem.
So that, again, if we can put all of that in writing, I think that if we can justify maybe, that happens, but we have to make sure that we do it in a way that is transparent. So the citizens will know exactly what was said, that it can't be done behind closed doors, because we don't want this to seem that, we're not being transparent, right? That's the most important thing that I think is, but again, we'll make sure that we get that on the agenda tomorrow, and if we need to reach out to you, but we want to make sure that that happens, we have a process that the citizen does know. For example, that citizen may say, well, that's not it, but there may be another citizen. And so we don't want to set a precedent where, you know what, I want to defend this person, then we have to give people time. So we want to make sure that that is transparent, because we don't know the outcome. For the Police Accountability Board, I think that after that, we can come back, have this conversation again, and maybe figure out some ways where that gray area is.
Well, I think the whole purpose is that it goes through the
process.
The process.
Mhm.
The problem is the process is so expensive.
Right, gotcha.
Because I think it's gonna come up in the hearing board, and I think it's gonna be reduced at the hearing board. The problem is, we had to go to the hearing board, and we had to spend this money.
Exactly.
And I'm saying it's a missing piece where, you know, missing piece.
So the thing, there are other elements when we have, costs, right? So we understand that too, but again, if we can just get that part, because this is going to a trial board, but if we can just, get that in writing, you can submit that to me, we'll talk offline, not, about the specifics of that situation. But if you can just, give me whatever the case number that you have, I'll make sure that we get that on the agenda.
Appreciate it.
That was kind of quick. You didn't even let me finish asking any questions. I got one. Just joking, but yeah, you are. So, but thank you for that. Anyone having any other questions? I know you guys want to get out of here, but ask some questions. Come on.
Well, I want to thank you for having us here, and I want to also thank you for coming out to our monthly, Police Chiefs Association Appreciation Panel meeting. You know, I'm the current elected president, I have my vice president here,
Okay.
and we also have our treasurer here.
Okay.
So ironically, we all just have to.
Got the
get
money.
together.
Okay, okay.
So, we really appreciate you all coming out. First of all, to dispel misinformation. Many of the chiefs throughout the state we see don't know how the processes work.
Mhm.
They don't understand the difference between the ACC and the PAB. And they think that you have investigative nature and they don't realize that you have oversight of the ACC and how those things work. They also don't realize that how the administrative hearing boards are set up. Until you actually have a case that comes before that in administrative hearing. But clearly, we appreciate that direction. And the case I wanted is not, I won't detail the case, but calling you the ACC program manager, we understand, but I want the chiefs throughout our county to understand that when officers perform before the administrative hearing board, there is an option that I didn't know about. The state law allows that we can come to a joint agreement. I have an officer in question that wants to accept now all of my discipline other than one charge. So I can't take the charge away, but still has to go to the administrative hearing board. But my city attorney, along with his attorney, are willing to say, we'll put that charge to rest, present that to the hearing. So if that's something that you've seen, I want to make sure that, we're all on the same page before I allow my city attorney to even enter into any joint resolution.
Okay. That, I have not seen that. So, I can get that information as well.
Okay.
And we'll take that up tomorrow.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was told to me as well.
Well, not just, but, have they had any conversation with the county?
No, they haven't. What I've seen in the emails I have is the police officer's attorney and our city's attorney. So they're both, and what the police officer's attorney is saying that he's entered these in the past, for police officers. They, what is called as joint motion to dismiss a particular offense.
Yeah, but what was told to me, and it was told to me the same way, is that both sides could actually come to the table to see if they come to agreement where the officer say, I would accept 1, 2, and 3, but this one right here, I would accept, but I don't accept the punishment. And then what it does is once they have agreement, it goes to the trial judge. The trial judge reviews it and will actually review all the evidence and everything. And if he or she feels that is justified, he will go ahead and sign off with it, move it back toward the ACC.
Okay.
And let them know that this is what his ruling was.
Okay.
And that's in lieu of a hearing.
Okay.
And it was explained to me that way.
It's saying that here too.
Yeah. There you go. It goes to
Sometimes
the
they have
judge.
just the judge alone.
Oh,
And and that's decided without going forward to an actual hearing. And it was all done virtually as well with just the judge.
okay. So that was,
No, this is not legislation at all. What this is the officer's attorney trying to explain to our city attorney what he's done in the past for police officers who didn't want to accept any part of of discipline
mhm.
or particular part of discipline.
With the new
New
process.
process.
That's what he's claiming.
So what we'll do is, yeah,
And this is.
And this was told to me too.
Right.
I
So-
think they need to be further, because what you don't want is to create these pockets that are known to all and it's not allowed to stay. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think-
Yeah, because someone told me the same thing, but my attorney wants to move forward with the hearing.
so, right, so I think, well, what we'll do, we do have an attorney on the administrative charge committee as well. So I'll get that again, make sure you have his information, you as well. Actually, I'll send it to everyone here. So we can bring that up, maybe you guys can have that conversation.
And that might be a county attorney who is looking at it legislatively. Because if I'm the municipal attorney, what's I'm gonna try? I might try that as something as a mediation. But I think it's, yeah, we might wanna have that conversation.
Before
Here
Those two administrators. Exactly.
And it may make sense and it may be a lap, but you don't want to do it.
Yeah,
Correct.
because what they initially called it was a streamlined administrative hearing board. And that was how it was first put to our attorney. And so I called over here to talk to the program manager. And what was told to me was that it was just recently allowed in the state, I know the exact word, because I wrote it to the city attorney, that the attorney general office for the state has just allowed that.
Oh,
So,
okay. That's an easy find.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, so
That-
that-
we can
that tells you what
add
they-
Taking that. Okay, so yeah, we'll have that conversation now, and we'll make sure that I get that on the agenda to get this, have discussed as well. But again, I'll share our attorneys, information.
And that's what I'm saying, that's the piece I'm looking at, because that piece, wait, that can be done,
Mhm.
that would save money for the trial court, because now the judge is still gonna look at it, right? But both sides agreeing on no ground.
So there's a fair process.
A fair
to get
process.
things recorded, right, that was the concern. Okay, okay. So we'll take that up, and we'll make sure that I get that over to the administrative charge committee. All right. That's it.
So just one more thing, first, this is my first, experience with BAB. And one thing that I have heard a lot of from everybody involved is, there seems to be, some gray areas, some things that could use clarification and such within the legislation that exists. Now, granted, when the BAB legislation went into effect in 21, obviously, it was all brand new stuff. And now, after 4 years of going through the process, following the processes, things like that, it seems to me like there has been identified some things that you folks would like to see cleared up, clarified, or additional things put in, taken out, whatever the case may be. Seems to be that you have some fine tuning changes to be done.
Mhm.
I'm on the legislative committee for the Maryland Chiefs of Police. I testified on 16 bills in Annapolis this year. Was about to claim it as a second residence. But one suggestion I do have is prior to the next session, might I suggest maybe not even a town hall type meeting, but maybe a round table type meeting with BAB, the ACC, and our local legislators to try and get some direction on this and try and clear things up. That way, everybody can be heard. A county chiefs association, I'm quite sure that President Alston would have no problem rounding us up for that. But I really think that that's something, being that we are in one of the busiest jurisdictions in the state as a whole, the county. You folks probably are busier than you would care to be on sometimes, maybe not all the time, but things like that. Some of the things that you've expressed tonight, I think is something that we should try and work into the legislation, in, out, or change. And I think a collaborative effort, I can go testify till I'm blue in the face. I'm gonna get the same response from a lot of them, no matter what it is. But if we have a collaboration and something that we all agree on, that's gonna carry a lot more water than just either you going or me going or somebody.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, so, they do in October, I think it's October, they do local bills. So the delegations have all of the local bills that, may apply just to Prince George's County and not all of the jurisdictions. So maybe prior to that, to your roundtable, but making sure by October, if there's some kind of legislation, then I would add the county council because they are working in lockstep with the incoming county executive to have that conversation, be able to take it to the delegation and see if there's something that can come. Because they have traveled a couple of occasions for some stuff they hasn't necessarily moved forward, but I think you're right. But I think it needs to happen then as part of a process.
And I will say, if the requests come from the PAB, folks that are actually conducting the business and doing the business, I can promise you that your input is going to mean a lot more than mine.
So we'll work together again. We always want to make sure that we serve the citizens with this entity and then law enforcement, but we always want to work together. And so before anything like that is done, we would want to let the community know some of the things. And the reason for that, when we talked about it staying in the officer's file, I don't think that that's fair, especially when you've seen video that it did not occur. So there is no period where it does come out, right? So that is a concern. So those are some of the things that we can sit down and talk about. But again, I want everything, and when we do that, it will definitely be an open session. We'll talk about trying to put that together, and maybe, talk to some community leaders to just come in, and then sit down and we have a roundtable, not just us, but some community leaders at that time as well. So we're looking trying to do that before October, right? So again, we're looking trying to do that. But if you can submit that request to PAB in writing, and then we'll make sure that we can try to get something on the calendar.
I can handle it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, and that was it. Any other questions from the chiefs? No, I mean, come, you have got to be kidding.
No, I'll be honest with you, I spoke to a lot of, chiefs who did run, I think we had the best, process right now. And I appreciate your efforts, I appreciate your time you put into this, because, it's way overdue. At the same time, I think y'all fair, and that's one thing, that I appreciate too, my officers, and I know that they do the same thing, that are very open, and you don't have to come to our meetings, and you do, and that means a lot. Thank us. Yeah, we want to work with you. I don't think no one wants a bad apple. We want to make sure we get, good officers to come, to work here. And I'm looking forward to keep on working.
Thank you. Like I said, I've talked to many of you, just offline, and I do ask officers, and I think that most of the board members will do that. Like, what is the most difficult, what is the challenging part of the job? Because we want to make sure, and there's a lot of training that, we took when it comes to like, citizens police academy and things like that. It answers a lot of questions. I think that those are some of the things that citizens need to understand. And again, we just want to make sure that everything is transparent. And for everybody here, I've had conversations with you guys that have been transparent.
I think the biggest problem we have right now is the mental, toll that, police officers have nationwide. I think the stress level is just up here. Every day as a chief of a small agency, I'm trying to manage people's personal lives, and it's hard. And what happens is trying to keep that personal life in the streets. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
These officers have a lot of baggage right now, and especially where there's going on with pay bills, childcare situations, because we had to change people's shifts and hours. Counties went to a 12-hour shift where people are now trying to find ways to childcare issues right now. That's a lot of pressure for one additionally to doing their jobs. And I think we should do more of having money set aside to actually deal with the mental stress that these officers are going through, because it's going to lead to complaints. It's going to lead to officers having breakdowns. It's going to lead to officers not showing up to work. So I think the mental part we need to address as a group, as a whole.
I completely agree with that. Like I said, I've watched those videos, countless videos where officers spoken to during the meeting, and they can't say anything, right? Because if you say one word. So I do stress that there are aggravating and mitigating factors that when we review those types of cases, because we understand that officers are under a lot of stress, right? So I think that it would be best for us to even go through some training, and we talked about that as a board, to potentially go through some of that training, like for an example, shoot, don't shoot, I understand. But I've done it several times, but there's no really threat to me, right? And you still make mistakes. So we want to make sure that we get that so we can understand it. But again, we're here to work together. And I think you all, and every chief that I've spoken with, understand the process is not us against anyone. It's all of us trying to work together. And I thank you to the president. We've had great conversations as well. And so I talked to even Chief Ferris and I, we've had great conversations. One of the things that I appreciate about it is that you can be completely honest with me. Tell me how you feel. Chief Ferris let me know how he felt. And we came to some common ground and understanding, but that's what it's about. Just voicing how you feel. And I know that he's really concerned with his office, but he's really concerned about stopping crime and bad office. So again, he gave me a lot of money to say that. But thank you, everyone, for the time. I know it was a messy night. There was a big concert, so we understand definitely. So even the members that were able to make it. So thank you for everyone. Thank you, Chiefs. And I just want to make this statement too, that being on the ACC, that I want to stress, as always, please tell your officers, no matter what the allegation is, don't lie. make sure that it's consistent. Because we know that the matrix says that if there's a discrepancy or a lie, that it's an automatic, it goes to a termination. So no matter what it is, no matter what it is, if they're honest and say they did it, then they won't be terminated. We'll go according to the matrix. But when they just flat out, there's nothing that we can do except go to that category F, which is termination. So we just want to make sure, I always say that, just tell them to tell the truth no matter what it is. It's concealing that gets the officers in trouble. But we haven't seen a lot of that. Nobody hit, just say that for the record, nobody hit. So, but I'd like to say that to everyone, just for the record, just tell them. And again, thank you for inviting me to your meetings. It's not about the donuts, because you don't have donuts, it's about the call. Thank you. But with that being said, we don't have anything else. If we have any follow-up, is it okay if we send, we'll have Ms. Allen send any questions over? And vice versa, if you guys have anything that you didn't think about or that you want us to take a look at, please submit it in writing. We'll take a look at that agenda for the next time. All right, well, with that
Before
being,
you all get staff to take a picture of all of you like to notate, we have to come here, so.
and we don't have to make a motion, correct, to adjourn. Okay, great. I just want to make sure we follow. We don't want to complain on us. So, that being said, I will go ahead and call the meeting over at 8:24 p.m. Thank you to everyone.
We'll take it.